The first time Lieutenant Aisha Johnson walked into the SEAL training compound in Virginia, she knew the eyes would be on her, and not because of her skill set, not because of her discipline, but because she was different, because she carried not just the weight of her own identity but the weight of expectations stacked against her. She was a black woman in a place dominated by men who prided themselves on their brotherhood, their toughness, their unbreakable bonds forged in blood and sweat, and while many would fold under that pressure, she carried herself with a calmness that unsettled even the loudest voices. Though she said nothing, not at first, only her tattoo, an intricate symbol inked along her forearm, a coiled serpent interlaced with 3 arrows pointing upward, seemed to speak louder than her silence, and that was what caught their attention, not her rank, not her composure, but that mysterious ink that none of them recognized, though instead of asking with respect, they laughed, they whispered crude jokes, one of them muttering, "What's that supposed to be, some kind of sorority thing?" And another chuckling, "Maybe it's a fashion statement, you know, to match the nails," and though the laughter wasn't loud enough to echo through the steel hallways, it carried the weight of dismissal, the kind of mockery that digs into the bone not because it's true but because it's lazy, the easy cruelty of men who thought they already knew the world and believed no one outside their circle could ever match their sacrifices. But Aisha had been through fires far hotter than their smirks could ignite. She had grown up in South Carolina, raised by a father who had once been in special forces himself but rarely spoke of it, a man who kept a worn box in the attic filled with photographs, medals, and folded letters, and it was in that attic that she first saw the same serpent and arrows symbol carved into the wood of the box, a symbol she later chose to etch onto her skin not as decoration but as inheritance, a silent pledge to a lineage of warriors who lived in the shadows, and though she had never been told the full story behind it, she knew enough to carry it like a torch, for every time she looked at it, she remembered the quiet strength of her father's silence and the sacrifices he carried without applause, and now as she stood in front of the SEAL platoon, enduring their smirks, she clenched her jaw but said nothing, because sometimes silence was louder than any retort, but her silence only fueled their curiosity, their mockery growing over the weeks of training, until it became almost a ritual. Whenever she passed by, someone would make a sly remark, whenever she rolled up her sleeves to train, someone would exaggerate a laugh, but she never cracked, never gave them the satisfaction, though in the quiet of her barracks she would trace her finger over the ink, whispering to herself, "One day, they'll understand." What she didn't know, at least not yet, was that the tattoo she wore wasn't just some forgotten family relic but a key to one of the military's most secret brotherhoods, one that even these SEALs, in all their pride, had only heard rumors about, a unit so old and so deeply classified that its existence was whispered like legend. The Arrows of Midnight, a clandestine group that operated outside the boundaries of conventional warfare, and the general who commanded them was the only man alive with the authority to acknowledge its members publicly, and he carried the same tattoo. The turning point came faster than anyone expected, for during a high-stakes training exercise designed to simulate a live hostage rescue in hostile territory, the SEALs who had once mocked Aisha's tattoo found themselves pinned down in a mock ambush. That felt far too real, their tactics crumbling under pressure as smoke bombs clouded their vision and the instructors barked over the loudspeakers, but it was Aisha who, instead of panicking, took command instinctively, her voice cutting through the chaos with a clarity that startled even the most seasoned men, guiding the squad out of the bottleneck and flipping the scenario in their favor. And while the instructors remained silent, the men could feel a shift in the air. She had proven herself without bragging, without demanding respect, simply by showing competence and calm under fire. Yet the whispers didn't stop, only changed tone, some muttering that she got lucky, others insisting it was a fluke, until the day General Marcus Everett himself strode into the compound, a man the SEALs revered, a decorated warrior with scars and medals who rarely involved himself in training exercises, and when his piercing eyes settled on Aisha, the room froze, because he didn't see a recruit, he saw the tattoo on her arm, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled, a small, knowing smile that confused the men who had mocked her. But before they could question it, he slowly rolled up his own sleeve, revealing the exact same serpent and arrows ink, faded by years but unmistakable, and the entire room went silent, the weight of their laughter crashing back on them as the general said in a voice as cold as steel, "This mark isn't fashion, it's a promise, and anyone who disrespects it disrespects me." In that moment the mockery died, replaced by shame, and the men who thought they had nothing left to learn realized they had underestimated not just Aisha, but a legacy older and deadlier than their brotherhood could imagine. What followed after that day would be remembered for years inside the compound, because the general didn't just defend Aisha, he ordered her to lead the very next critical training operation, one that mimicked the kind of black ops mission few outside the highest circles even knew existed, and under her command the unit performed flawlessly, not because the men suddenly adored her, but because they realized her calm precision wasn't born of arrogance but of bloodline, discipline, and secrets far deeper than their pride. And when she finally revealed, with the general's quiet nod, that her tattoo tied her to the legendary Arrows of Midnight, a unit so clandestine it answered only to a handful of leaders in U.S. history, the men no longer saw her as an outsider but as a living link to a legacy even they had once whispered about with awe. And though respect doesn't come easy in the Brotherhood, it came that day, not through apologies or empty words, but through silence, the same silence she had carried all along, now mirrored in their humbled eyes. And as the sun set over the compound, the general said only one thing: "You mocked what you didn't understand. Now you follow it." From that moment forward, the black woman whose tattoo had been ridiculed stood not behind them, not beneath them, but among them as an equal, and, in time, as their leader.